Welcome to the Yoga Pod Shop, where part podcast, part workshop, but all things yoga. I am your host, Kaycie Nikole, and today my co-host we have Jessica Warren, and we also have April here today, which I'm really excited to be talking with both of them. Today's topic is about yoga and money, the world of money in as being a yoga teacher, where it can get really complicated and sticky, and we don't talk about this topic enough. So I'm very much looking forward to this. This session and all of our sessions are recorded and they're available for your viewing afterwards. So I hope you enjoy. And I would like to go ahead and just get to know y'all a little bit more too. So I'm going to start with our main co-host, Jessica Warren. If you want to pop on here and just give a little deets on you, your kind of connection into the yoga world, what you've been doing, and where you're at right now.
Excellent. Well, hello, welcome. I met Kaycie, first of all, in Modesto, California, while we were there for a contract. My husband does travel physical therapy, and I obviously travel with him and usually teach. And I also work as a therapy tech or aide in a lot of the clinics where we are stationed for our contracts. I've been teaching for about 20 years. My passion is teacher training and anatomy. I absolutely love and I'm a total geek on anatomy, but have had so much experience, especially in the money part of yoga, because I teach at multiple different studios across the country. And every single place that I go, that's a conversation that has to be had. And the conversation is completely different with every single opportunity that comes about. So it's something that I definitely agree with Kaycie is just not spoken about enough amongst teachers. And the expectations surrounding the financials of yoga are very strange for some people. And it's something that we need to get far more comfortable to be empowered to have those conversations very clearly and very early on. So we know what we are willing to commit to as a teacher and also what the expectations should be moving forward with studios also. So
Mhm.
not just like, I want to make a ton of money, but like what is actually realistic in the yoga market? And how do we talk to studio owners? How do we talk to each other? And how do we differentiate between the different offerings that we have? You know, what you would do for a teacher training is drastically different than what you would do for an in-studio class, which is far different than you would do for a private or an offsite private. So there's just a lot to the conversation, and I've experienced it all many, many different times in many, many different areas.
I thank you so much, Jess. I'm so stoked to have you on here. And I have to say, I reached out to a handful of different yoga teachers because what I really wanted from this was to have diversity in perspectives and have teachers that are all kind of doing different things. And I have to say, you have one of the most unique stories for how you connect. And I have been inspired since I met you because I was like, my gosh, this girl like just walks into a space and meets new people everywhere she goes and just like connects with all these communities. So I am super excited to kind of explore that a little bit more too today. So
Thank you.
yes, very, very happy to have you here. And then I'm going to pass the torch to April here. I also had reached out to her because what she's doing right now is super cool. And I love all the different offerings you have. So I'm going to go ahead and just pass the torch to you real quick here.
Oh, well, thanks. Also, I need Jess's like geekness for anatomy because that's just like not my strong suit. And I like envy teachers who are like so good and like with that space. So I'll have to definitely look at some of your stuff.
Yes, we'll connect.
Yeah. Gosh, I think Kaycie and I met like once at a yoga that was offered here in Phoenix when you were like kind of traveling back and forth between Phoenix and California. I moved to Phoenix in 2020, August of 2020, and I started teaching shortly after that. So it's been about 4 years of teaching. I moved to full-time teaching June of last year, where I quit my full-time job. And since then I've been, yeah, I mean, I love it. I couldn't imagine doing anything else anymore, but it's definitely a hustle for sure, but like something I'm enjoying to explore myself. So really my goal was I do teach at studios, but you can't make a full-time living teaching at studios. There's just no way, no how. I couldn't imagine teaching. I don't even know how many classes it is at that point to even like make a living. So I kind of took a unique perspective because Phoenix is such a cool city and I thrive on connecting with community as well. So I took a different shift with doing more so pop-up events that I just handle throughout my business, Yoga with April. And I connected with businesses who, of course, have the space to do yoga, but then just like really cool spaces, like a natural wine and snack shop. We do them at bars, we do them at private gyms, we'll do them outside, things like that too. And then last year as well, I started my own retreat business. So I host about 4 retreats a year too. So I gather people domestically and internationally to do yoga retreats with my business partner who's located in Colorado. So yeah,
Oh, she's in Colorado.
yeah, we met ironically enough one time in Phoenix too. I've been lucky enough to like keep plucking out of Phoenix like cool people even when they move. We kind of stay connected that way too. So she's based in Colorado. We meet every 3 months to kind of plan what our retreats are going to look like. And yeah, we kind of flew by the seat of our pants with our first year in our retreat business. Like we would plan one, get people signed up, get it going probably in like a 3-4 month span. And now we really took the initiative to plan ahead. So we have like all of our 2025 retreats lined up and it just gives us so much more space to keep collaborating and pivoting and finding new avenues to kind of dive down into this world.
That is awesome. And seriously, congrats on going full time with everything because that is a leap of faith. And, I don't think people understand how difficult it really is. Um, yeah. So thank you for being here. And I am stoked to kind of go down some more of those avenues, especially with the retreats. I'm
Yeah.
very curious to hear your perspectives on all of that. We do also have Emma popped on here. I'm not sure if you wanted to join in, but I'm going to give you a moment if you did want to pop on just to give a brief hello introduction and kind of your experience with yoga. You don't really have to have experience or anything like that. Just kind of curious. So I'll give you a moment if you want to say anything, pop on in.
Yeah, I don't mind giving a little intro.
Ooh.
Well, Kaycie, you introduced me to yoga actually. I've told you before that my first class was with you. And then it was 2020 that I did my teacher training at Elevate. Unfortunately, it was right when COVID started, so I didn't initially have a lot of teaching opportunities. I kind of taught here and there for free when I was attending UC Davis. I kind of checked out the yoga club, things like that. But for the past year and a half, I've actually been teaching at a gym here in Sacramento. I teach gentle yoga, power yoga, and I'm about to start teaching a weekly yin class. I haven't done anything else as far as like getting paid for yoga outside of just teaching those, hour-long classes. April, when you mentioned retreats, my first thought was like, oh, I find retreats kind of intimidating. But it's like one of those things that I think crosses every yoga teacher's mind at least once, of like a potential kind of other way that you can, have an impact in a way that is financially sustainable for your own being as well. So I'm just kind of doing that. So that brings me, I'll be at 5 classes a week that I teach regularly. But outside of that, I'm in my master's program right now to be a therapist. And my concentration for my degree is yoga and psychology because they're like my two passions. So my plan is to combine the two. But I liked the idea of this topic because it doesn't hurt to find other ways to kind of make money from this. So that's me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm super happy to see you. It's
It's
been
been
a
a while.
while. So thank you. Thanks for popping on here. And I think that this is a perfect blend for this group because we have those that do it part-time, we have full-timers, and kind of different pockets and focuses, which I think is great because depending on whether or not you are going full-time into the yoga world, it really kind of dictates the directions and the potential options that you have. Let me see if I can switch my screen here. I want to be able to see all of you guys, and this is my first time doing it. Oh, there we go. I can see everyone. This is wonderful. I'm still learning technology, full-time yoga teacher online here, and I'm still learning how to use it. So what I did kind of want to talk about. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about me and kind of what has my journey, my experiences that kind of have led me here and wanting to have this conversation. So I've been teaching since 2012, and I was definitely that person that straight from the beginning, I knew I wanted to do this full time, like put my full commitment into it. So when I first started teaching, I started with just like one studio, and then it expanded. I was teaching at all the studios in my local area, which at the time there was not many. And I kind of just got to know different pockets of people over the course of that time. And what I soon realized as I was teaching like 18 classes a week was I was so burned out. I was just trying to make a living. I was just trying to be able to pay my bills. And I didn't even have that many bills at the time. And I was a struggling yoga teacher. And so I found any opportunity I could find, I took it. And so I think after a while, when you're starting to, exchange your 1 hour class, which if you are a yoga teacher, you know that if even if it's an hour long class, you're teaching for longer than an hour. Like the time you're there, the time it takes to drive there, set up, talk to people, do the class, finish up, clean up, talk to people again, all that. It's like 2, sometimes even 3 hour process that you have between the start and the finish of it all. And so I was just starting to feel so burnt out that I was looking for other ways to kind of put myself out there. And that's kind of when I started to do more events, more workshops. And when I did workshops, it was more of like, let me teach the stuff that I really like, which at the time was more like arm balances and inversions. And that was kind of like my main focus. And so after doing that for a while, still feeling pretty burned out, I did managing of different studios and working that. I've done social media for different studios. And then finally, when I opened up my studio in 2017, that's when I started to shift into a different focus and mindset on the business side. And that was also when I had to consider payment for my teachers that were at the studio. And I think that this is the conversation that I would love to have to be kind of the initiator in all of this is so I worked for a studio, and I'm not going to say any names for anything, but I worked at a studio once, and in the beginning when we were all signing contracts, there was something in the contract that said not to discuss your pay with any of the other teachers. And that was something that it really just did not sit with me. I did not like it at all. So the first thing I did was talk to other yoga teachers about that part of the contract. And it really brought up a lot because what I started to realize was there was a lot of imbalance in the way people were getting paid. And this is an interesting kind of discussion and topic because, a lot of people, got paid less for experience level or got paid more for their experience level and all these different things. But the whole stigma behind not talking about these things was creating more tension and more weirdness. And overall, I just didn't align with that space anyways and, made my way somewhere else. But in the area where I live, which is more of the Central Valley in California, I would say that when I first started getting paid for classes, it was $20 per class. And it didn't matter if it was an hour or 90 minutes, like it was the same pay. That was it. And then slowly I started kind of working my way up until really the max that I've experienced in the Central Valley has been a base payment of like $35 per class. And then maybe with incentive pay, if it's a big enough studio that allows you to have, more than 10 people or so in a class. And I guess I am just kind of curious too, from y'all's perspective, if what the pay, I know all of you have different backgrounds and different places you've been. So I'm going to start with you, Jessica. I know that you've traveled a ton, so I would love to hear your perspective on class payments.
So I will start by saying that things have changed a lot since COVID. Prior to COVID, I was teaching for 15 years, and the way that most studios, at least in the Midwest, worked is you got paid a base pay based on your designation and your experience. And then beyond that, you would get paid oh, why can't I think of the word?
Incentive.
Incentive.
What did you say, April?
Incentive.
No, yes, but they called it something else. Like you would commission. You would get commission on every student over 5 people. So my home studio, we could have about 82 people per class on the floor. Like we had a huge space.
Okay.
And Saturday morning, and I'll back up even a little bit more. In order to teach, you had to start teaching the most god awful times ever. So like I taught at 5:45 in the morning, I taught at 8 p.m. Like I had the weirdest schedule, but in order to get those prime class times, that was what you had to do. That was, the dues that you had to pay as a newer teacher to kind of get your foot in the door, to establish your student base, and to grow your classes. Um, once you Even at that point, it was commission based, but your hourly was different. Your base pay was different based on your experience. So for a RYT 200, it was around $20 per class. For an ERY2, it was 25. For a 500, it was, I believe, 30. And then for anything over that, your commission went up per person. So you still got the $30 base pay per class. And then every student beyond that, instead of getting $1 per head over 10 people, you would get $2 per head over 10 people. So fast forwarding after I had, gotten out of this horrendous class times. Some of them I actually did keep for a long time because I loved the group of people, but and built a really great uh community for those class times, like 5:45 in the morning. So I was getting paid a lot teaching at 5:45 in the morning, which was kind of nice. But anyway, at that point, Saturday mornings at 7:45 and 9 a.m. were the class time that had the most students because of the community, because of it was part of a resort. Like there was just a lot of different factors. And I was averaging between 75 and $150 per class. So when everything changed with COVID, it went to a sliding scale of number of students. And that cut my pay more than in half because it was 0 to 10 students, you got X number of dollars, 10 to, and there was still the base pay, but there was not the um, uh, commission because the argument was that if you were a news teacher, you didn't have the opportunity to create your community yet, and it just wasn't fair, which I had a lot of issue with, and I still have a lot of issue with because I feel that a lot of what we do as yoga teachers has been devalued significantly by the fact that you can go and spend 2 weeks or 3 weeks online somewhere and do your teacher training and never have taught in person, never do anything with like connecting with someone, like with the new moon, where you are constantly in contact with the, whole, like with Kaycie, with anybody that you may be working with, Sam, myself, however it pans out, you constantly have that communication. You have people that you have to teach to. It is a much more personal and in person and elevated program as far as the expectation of you having hours of teaching before you become a teacher. And that has just watered down the market to the point that you have people who get out of a teacher training and they expect to have a prime class time. And I managed a studio for many years. And you would get the people that come in and say, okay, I just finished my teacher training and I can teach at 5:30 p.m. on Wednesdays, and I can teach at 9 a.m. on Saturday, and then I can teach every seventh, like Sunday at 6 p.m. And that is what they are offering you. And they expect to be paid $50 an hour. And it's just it's crazy, and it was such a like massive change of earning those hours and earning that time and cultivating the community and really building your own brand and business as a teacher within yourself, um however you choose to do that. And that became what happened in your classes. It was a direct correlation between how much time you put in, how many people you reached out to, how often you were willing, like Kaycie said, to come in early and work with people, to stay a little bit later and work with people, to touch base and say, hey, if you want to continue this conversation after the 15 minutes that I've committed myself to being here, I will do that, but it will have to be during a private. And, putting yourself out there and valuing your time.
Mhm.
And I think across the country, I've kind of found the same thing. If you value your time, and even, I mean, I shouldn't say even as, always as the person that nobody knows, it's kind of hard to get into a community and teach to people that have never met you. So you really have to be comfortable in holding space for people and confident in yourself as a practitioner, as a student, getting on your mat everywhere that you go, and making sure people meet you and that you connect with people, and then being able to say, but this is my experience level, this is what I have done up to this point, and this is what my expectation is, and be willing to walk away if they say, well, that's not what we can't do, and just gracefully thank them and say, that's just not an opportunity for me at this time.
Mhm. Yeah, I connect with that because I was so humbly like taught that lesson early on. I remember like probably within my first year that I had started teaching, very new but very excited. There was a moment I was going to San Francisco a lot. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna start connecting in with, these different studios. And it wasn't like I was just blindly like putting myself out there. Like, no, I was gonna go, like I was practicing with them and like trying to build myself as being part of the community. And it was just like literally nothing. Like they could not have cared less about me. And I remember just trying to put myself out there and they're like, I'm sorry, you're not what we're looking for. And I was just like devastated. And then I started to realize a lot of studios out there would require you to at least be a 500-hour teacher um, to even start teaching. And so it's like, whew, the level of, investment that you have to even get yourself to make 20, $30, for a class.
One thing I do want to comment on that is I mean, before online training, everything you did was in person. So, in order to get to that level of where you are able to teach, all the different formats, and you are able to conduct a workshop, or you are able to do any kind of continuing education, the amount of investment you had to put in time and money wise was so much greater, and the number of opportunities were so much fewer because nothing was online. It was all in person. So, we went from having these tiny little, I shouldn't say tiny little, but these very specific yoga communities in different areas. And that expanded so exponentially with, yoga online and with everything that happened during COVID and being able to teach live online. So, I mean, it's just a completely different situation because that was never something that was even an option. I mean, I never did ask Kaycie. I never did anything online. And this whole online thing is like a completely different world for me, because everything we did had to be in person and there just was no other option. So when a studio said, and they did expect you had, a 500-hour or at least an ERYT 200 and have, hundreds of hours of teaching experience before they would even consider letting you audition. And you had to audition everywhere you taught. And it was usually with a lot of really stoic people.
Of course, right? That's not
Yes,
intimidating at all.
not at all.
Thank you so much for sharing that too. I am also very curious, April, with you being in Arizona and especially kind of coming in during the COVID time, I'm so curious to hear your take on this as well.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was thinking when Jess was talking, like, I feel like the expansion of online yoga has also made it so hard for more like in-person stuff to be valued and be paid appropriately because, which I don't think this at all, but like, I feel like most people think like, why would I pay XYZ to go to you when I could stay at home and probably get it for free on YouTube and like some like outrageous thing. So it's hard to uh, fight against that sometimes when you have just the convenience of what's going on online. And I feel like from my perspective, I mean, yoga here, like in the Phoenix and the Scottsdale area is pretty popular and there's a lot going on all the time. So I try to just find different ways or different avenues or different studios and different communities versus the ones that are always being showcased so often. Because of course, when you're seeing those ones, that's where everyone's going to try to go because they want to be with everyone there. So I started teaching at studios that also offered incentives. So I've been paid as low as $25. I've been paid as high as $85 for a class out here so far. And I think you have to think more than just the pay rate. Of course, the pay rate matters more than ever, especially when it's your full-time job. But I really tend to stick to places that I am received well, like when students want to connect with me outside of class, when students are asking me more questions in class, when I find studios that are supportive of me building up my own brand and then kind of sharing what I'm doing outside of that space, because I think that matters more than just what your base rate is sometimes, thinking more long term of like, okay, I'm getting paid this, but what is the input and the output, seeing what matters, what makes sense. And yeah, people in the studios here come to my yoga retreats, they do my online offerings, all those things too. So I definitely stick with studios that I get the benefit from as well. Like I'm bringing you my practice, I'm bringing you my energy, my teaching. So like, what am I getting out of that? And how are we also helping both of the students at the same time?
I love that. And I love that you commented on like the fit, the energetic fit for those spaces, because like I resonate with that so much. I think that that was probably more of the underlying reason why I was like, I need to open up a studio because like I just am not vibing in these pockets right now. I gotta like do something else. Because it's so powerful. And I think because yoga is such a deep practice, it's such like a meaningful practice that I feel like, you know, every studio has its own feel when you walk in the doors and they kind of focus and highlight different things of importance. And it's hard to find a community that feels like home, you know, like that, just like fully comfortable space. And I think that, you know, regardless, like you said, regardless of the pay, if that part doesn't match, you know, the rest kind of just falls to crap anyways. But um, yeah, that's an interesting comment because I actually felt like that was even a bigger priority than the money. Like the money was like you once you start teaching, that's the thing is like doors just open everywhere all of a sudden, you know, and it's like and then everyone needs a sub. So
And I feel
that's
like we get like so worried too, so worried about if we say no, we're not going to get that same opportunity, or if we say no, like they're going to give it to somebody else. But it's just like what like you have to value your time at some point. Like I'm still learning that myself. Like I'm like I need to start charging for travel fees when I'm going XYZ out of my way, like things that you just like don't think about because you don't have the space to think about it because you're so busy just ramping up your teaching schedule and building all this stuff that you have to find a point, or you have to get to a point rather where you're like, what is even making sense anymore? Like I'm just saying yes, and like what even makes sense for not even just my time, my well-being, just like everything at some point. And
mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah. Oh no, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, and you know what's important for me is I write those things down. Like, how far am I willing to travel and not have to pay or have to charge an additional travel expense on top of that? And like actually sit in your car and drive that amount of time and be like, okay, am I okay with not getting paid for this? Am I okay with going 35 minutes and then setting up for a private or setting up for a class or whatever it may be? And how is that going to, you know, that 35 minutes then turns into 70 minutes because you have to go back home, you know, and how does that fit into your day? And how financially, how are you compensating for that hour and 10 minutes that you have, you know, virtually nothing that you're actually able to do other than commit yourself to that drive or, you know, that setup time or whatever it might be. And that's something that I think a lot of times is overlooked now that so much is offered online. Like you said, April, like it's really important to be able to have those online offerings, but it's equally as important to understand the value and the uh, greater value of that in-person connection and that like Kaycie was saying that you know community aspect of it and being able to touch a body if you're explaining something and being able to you know really connect with people on that energetic level because so much of yoga really is that.
And Emma, I'm curious for you too, especially with like just kind of dabbling with different studios out there. Have you explored it all with different kind of studios or pay structures or anything like that?
So I haven't worked at any like just like a traditional yoga studio. I've only worked at this one gym that has yoga classes amongst obviously other class offerings. And I'm an employee, so like I get a W-2. I have like an hourly pay. The cats are making noise. And we're expected to clock in 15 minutes before class and then 10 minutes after class. So it is a little more than an hour. And we are paid, I have an hourly rate, but basically when you add it all up, for each class, each single class that I teach, I make about like low 30s. It's like 32, 33. And then for every single class I teach, they also give me like $1 stipend for my like Spotify subscription, basically. So it doesn't matter if you teach one class a month or 20 classes a month, you get $1 per class. So it does add up. Like right now, I'm making more than my Spotify subscription actually costs, which is cool, but it's just a couple bucks extra. And it used to be a little different. They recently kind of restructured how they did the pay, but it comes out to the same amount at the end. I was thinking though how nice it would be to have that whole like, this is your flat rate, and then for each additional person, you can get, like you guys said, the incentive or the commission. I think I first heard of that idea from you, Kaycie. I think in part of the business portion of our teacher training, you did discuss some of the things that you had seen in other studios. They don't do that at the gym. So I have had classes where I had one person, and I've had classes where we were completely full, which is like 20 people. It's not a huge room, and I get paid the same either way. And so it's like, and I still enjoy doing it. Sometimes though, if I have a really small class, it's like this was like a private or group yoga class, I could be charging more. You know what I mean? But yeah, I've been looking though, especially now that I just recently moved. So my commute to and from the gym has 2 locations. One of them takes me about 20-ish minutes to get to. The other one takes me about 30-ish one way. And I'm teaching multiple times a week. So it's a good chunk of driving that isn't, yeah, I don't really get much from. So even though I'm teaching 4 classes a week right now, soon it'll be 5, but right now it's 4. I think I make about 500 a month, but then subtract my gas, and I'm not really sure what I'm left with after that. But yeah, that's kind of just been my experience. I want to check out studios here, especially like in Sacramento. There are a few. There's one newer one that's in West Sacramento, which is where I just kind of moved back to, and I've been thinking about reaching out. But I've noticed that sometimes when you go on their websites, they don't make it all that clear of like how you can express interest. There isn't a page for like, are you interested in teaching here, or anything like that. It's just here are our membership options.
Mhm.
and which is obviously important, but I don't mind showing up and interacting and engaging in the community as opposed to just sending over my resume. But sometimes I'm just like, do you even need teachers right now? Like, I don't want to waste anyone's time. So yeah.
That's actually a really good point too, because I do think everyone's always kind of, especially since 2020, I have seen sub lists just go crazy, meeting people all the time. So I wouldn't be surprised if you did reach out. I will say from my perspective, and I'd be curious as to your perspectives as well. When I was running Elevate, I was a little, I was protective over my community. I didn't want just like anyone to kind of come in. I wanted to almost like filter out, those that fit, fit the vibe. The vibe is the most important. And so for me, I was like, I just need to feel people's vibe. And so anytime people would outreach to me and say, hey, can I start teaching there? Or, are you looking for teachers? My response back to everybody was, come practice with us. Come become a part of this studio and a part of our community. See if we are the right match for you, because that's what's the most important part. And usually that was the last time I heard from them, right? It's like, I don't want to invest my time into this, just hire me. But those that did, that's actually how I met Jessica. Was she came in and started practicing, and then I was like, you have a beautiful practice, and then we ended up talking after class, and it's like one thing leads to another. And so for me, that's always my biggest suggestion to people who are looking to kind of get into different places is just go practice with them, because if you go practice with them, you're going to either come to one of two conclusions, which is either A, I love this place and I can't wait to be a part of this community, or B, this is not the right fit for me and I think I'm going to go look elsewhere. And I think that that part is huge, because then you'll save yourself a lot of stress later when you're fully immersed in a community that you're like, you literally, I don't think I've ever hated so much going to a class, when in my head I'm like, oh, I just don't vibe with this space. I don't feel like it brings me to life when I come here. So, yeah, I'm curious what you explore out there as well in the SAC area.
I was,
I will say,
oh no, go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Jen.
No, I will say this is something I do every 3 months. What Kaycie literally just explained, because we have a different contract, usually every 3 to 6 months, depending on where we are and what we're up to. But every time we get to a new location, I was at my home studio for like 15 years. So I had never, other than doing, workshops and teacher trainings and things like that, I had never just walked into a space and taught to a group of complete strangers and hoped they liked me. It's a very different animal when you don't know anybody. But Kaycie, I 1000% agree with you. If you ever want to teach at a studio, my experience has always been go to the studio and practice. If people come up to you, like I'll tell you what my litmus tests are. If someone comes up to me and starts talking to me and welcomes me and is like, hey, I haven't seen you before, those are the first signs of like, this is a place for me, because it is so important to me as a teacher and as a practitioner that we understand that yoga is a yoking and that drawing together of people, of energy, of, knowledge. It's not just going somewhere for a workout. And to have someone welcome you into their space and have someone connect with you on that level, shows me that their yoga is yoga to start with, and then go back and you have those conversations. You start to talk to people, you start to get to know each other. And I mean, what Kaycie said for my experience has been pretty much spot on. I go somewhere and generally I will have the teacher be like, oh my gosh, your practice is so nice. Have you been practicing a long time? Do you teach? And it's just a very organic conversation. And I think you all sound like you've practiced so like, a very considerable amount, that when you go into a studio, oftentimes that is something that someone recognizes, that grace, that softness, that, just peace within your practice, that you are there to do your yoga, not to show off or perform for anyone. And that really resonates when you're in a studio space and they instantly, are kind of drawn to that. So yeah, I agree 100% with Kaycie. Just go practice somewhere and they will probably be like, hey, do you want to teach?
Yeah, I feel like I was just gonna piggyback off that too. And I've seen a couple studios out here do it, which I think is nice because like again, like thinking from a full-time yoga instructor's perspective, like it's hard for me to get to classes sometimes. Half the time I am practicing at home because I'm like either I have some free time in between my classes. So it's just another added level. It's like, okay, now I have to go to the studio and practice here and see if it's a lot of work that needs to happen. But I think something that's worked out here that I really like to see, if somebody reaches out to a studio, it's nice. Like, I'll give you a couple classes for free. Like, just come in your free time. Like, we want you to come here as much as you want to come see this space. And like, just so you can show, or the studio rather can show, like, we want to like see you and see your practice. We don't want to just have you come in, take your money for a class or two. Like if you are interested, like come on in, scope out the vibe. We'll make you an account, give you a few free classes, and kind of go from there. That's how I've gotten into one studio I really like here. And then again, the other ones, but you have to have the leisure to just go practice. Like I definitely, when I first moved here, I think that was an added, like fire under my butt. Cause I was like, oh, I want to check out the yoga out here anyway. So I was bouncing around to all the studios here, but also I had a full-time job to fall back on. So I didn't really have to worry about teaching that much still either. So I just think everyone has a very unique path of how they teach at studios. And I do think the common denominator is more word of mouth, is more in person, but just like, yeah, just being more like, is it a studio I like, or what studio do I like to practice at? Because of course, then you're going to enjoy teaching there and the students who come to that space as well.
I really love how you said, for studios to offer that. It's almost like saying, hey, I would love for you to come and be a part of our space to see if this is the right fit for you. I think that that's a perfect way of segueing in. And I wish I would have, had that mindset back then too, because that would have probably led to a lot more doors opening than, just like that strict barrier of like, what if they can't afford classes and things like that?
I
So I
think
really
just
like that.
added like, hey, yeah, like I appreciate you reaching out to us. So let me kind of give you something back here and come take some classes, come meet us, come feel out the vibe, and just makes it a more welcoming atmosphere, I think sometimes.
Awesome.
And
I
I
love that.
think also asking straight up, like, do you have any new student specials? Like, I'm checking out, and I will tell people that I'm checking out multiple different studios in the area. Do you have a new student special? And that right there will give you, like April said, that, kind of that feeling or that vibe. Like, is this somewhere that wants, to grow their community and wants to, draw other people in, or is this somewhere that is just making money?
Absolutely. I am gonna kind of shift it back here a little bit. So um, I want to comment and say that the very first time that I got offered a $20 for teaching a yoga class, I was ecstatic, by the way, because I had only worked, I think at that time my job right beforehand was I had worked at Starbucks for quite a while, and I actually really loved that job. But when I shifted, I didn't really know. I was like, oh, I got paid very little per hour for that. So when I started teaching, and they were like, yeah, $20 for one class. And I think it was an hour. I was like, oh my God, $20 an hour. This is great. And I just like didn't take into consideration all the time and all of that preparation and the education and all of that was going to go into it. And then what I didn't realize was like, oh, I have to take out all my taxes as well. Okay, such a different story. And so I actually did work at a gym once that did hire me W-2, but I think that was the only job that did. Outside of that, it was just independent contractor. Now, in the beginning, when I first started teaching, um, the understanding of what an independent contractor actually needed to work at yoga studios was kind of like, oh, so you're just going to kind of wing it. But then you realize there's a bunch of added expenses now because people are being a little bit more strict on the requirements. And at least in the state of California, as far as I know, you need to have a business license in order to operate as an independent contractor. You need to have your own insurance, right? And a lot of places will also require you to be registered as a yoga teacher as well. And so it's like you're paying all these extra fees on an annual basis. And then on top of that, your gas and all of that stuff. And so that $20 dwindled very, very quickly. And especially after taxes, I was like, oh my gosh, you really get paid sometimes less than minimum wage for your time. And I think at that point is when I was like, I can't keep doing it this way. I got to start thinking outside of the box. So at the time, I started offering more like yoga brunches and things like that, like special events. But one thing I realized with teaching events is you have to diversify your offerings. You can't just have the same offering month after month after month and expect, like, and to some degree you can, but let's say if it's like an arm balance workshop and you're wanting to teach it once a month, it's like, well, guess what, like the interest dies down, and especially if people see that you're offering it on a very consistent basis, they're going to be like, I'll wait till next time. It's easy to brush it off because there's going to be another one, versus this is the one I'm having, and maybe a few months down the road I'll have another announcement or something like that. But I started shifting more into like figuring out that world of like events and then workshops and playing in that realm. And this is when I started to see how different studios also operated for their pay structures for events and workshops. Now, a standard, and I'm once again, I'm very curious to hear with y'all. A standard around here would be basically like if I had my workshop idea and presented it to a studio space, it ranged in the percentage. It was always a percentage split of the net profits. And basically, I would say at the best, I made 80%. And that was basically, I have to take on all my promoting myself. The studio's not going to promote it for me. I'm going to promote it I'm going to do all the work. They're just basically letting me use the space and the props. Like that's it. And then it would range all the way down. I never accepted this, but I had a studio one time that tried to do a 50-50 split. And I was like, oh, no, 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 no. Let me go ahead and explain all the things that I put into this for you to get 50% of it. No, thank you. And so when I started running Elevate, I had to decide kind of what I wanted to do. And so I did a lot of promoting for my teachers. It was never like a you're on your own. Like if you're going to be part of the space, you're part of the space and community, I'm going to promote you. And it was always a 70-30 split. And I'm just kind of curious as to your takes at different studios that you've been to and how you've kind of received or negotiated this. Whomever wants to jump in.
I feel like I always cut Jess off the moment she's going to talk.
No, go ahead.
No, I feel like Kaycie, that's the same here too. I mean, 70-30 is most common. I've seen 60-40. And then I've seen some studios like you just rent it out for an hour or so and they will like promote and things like that too. But I don't know, workshops are so touchy. I like to take them outside of the yoga studio and just find like a really cool space that's like cheap to rent for a couple hours. So again, I'm bringing them to a different location, which is really kind of cool. I don't have to depend on like a studio or I have to pay them a certain percentage. I don't know. So just like thinking outside of like the box of like, you can hold a workshop wherever really, as long as it has like a cool vibe and a space. And like, you could rent some of these places for like $30 an hour and you need it for like 2 hours or something. So I don't know. I just, again, thinking outside of the box because everyone, I feel like when you think just yoga studios, everyone's going there for workshops. So of course they're going to say like all these ridiculous rates of how much they're going to charge and how much they're going to take and stuff too. But I mean, I think 70-30 is pretty reasonable, especially if hopefully they're helping you promote. At least I now just say that upfront to people. It's like, of course, I'm going to bring people here, but I'm bringing it to your studio. If you think people are going to like this class, like let's collab on some posts. If I tag you, will you repost? Can I do X, Y, Z? Like, again, just if you don't say it, they're not going to say it to you.
Mm-hmm.
For
Okay, so
sure.
it's nice to hear that it's actually pretty similar.
Yeah.
And I have a very, I don't want to say very different experience, but the majority of what I do as far as workshops for the last 10 years is continuing ed. So because I'm a continuing ed provider for Yoga Alliance, the majority of what I end up doing as far as offerings is what studios are looking for, or they have a group of teachers that need to do, CE credits and they, reach out for something specific. So when I do something like that, I always do 80-20 because I am the one that's providing or creating the content and providing the education. And they are the ones that are actually benefiting from it because they need it to keep their certification. So it's a little bit of a different, you know, like the utility of why I'm doing it is a little bit different. However, when I first started teaching, I did, obviously all the arm balance and inversion workshops and like the backbending and all the fun stuff. Um, but to be completely honest, I'm in my late 40s. That's just not my jam in my practice anymore. Can I do it? Yeah. Is it something that I'm passionate about the way that I was when I was in my 20s and 30s? No. Just because I think as a community, we've been able to diversify so much more as far as the um, benefits of gentle yoga and yin yoga and understanding, the functional piece of yoga and the therapeutics of yoga and how you can help, you know, keep yourself moving and keep yourself younger and work on your balance and work on, all of those daily things that are so important as we age and being able to bring continuing education into studios to teachers who really their only exposure to teaching is teaching power classes and teaching these, very specific formats and very specific groups of teachers. There's just so much out there and there's just so much content that I've had the, you know, benefit of being able to study this long that I can take to people and say, hey, I know you need these continuing education credits. This is something that I offer. And it's, now that I've been, from the East Coast to the West Coast multiple times, and in a bunch of different studios, a bunch of different studios. I have people that now reach out and are like, would you be willing to do this? Can you do it online? Um, or do you want to come in? So like just creating that little, pocket of stuff that you are passionate about and that you can kind of like you said, April, like you're thinking outside of the box of like, oh, I can go to these different, local businesses or different places and kind of help promote them as they help promote me and still offer yoga. Like you can do that in so many different ways throughout the practice of yoga also. So really just, kind of figure out like, what are you comfortable doing? I had a friend who have a friend who has a tattoo studio and it's this huge, beautiful open space. And when he first bought the space, he could not afford to just have it empty for the amount of time that it was empty because he was the only person there. He's like, hey, would you want to teach yoga classes here? So I taught like 4 classes there a week. And, I was there and I paid him, I think it was like at that point, this was like 15 years ago. I think it was like $25 per class. But then we had like 30 people in there and it was amazing. So, you can get really creative with how you reach out to community businesses and how you help support other businesses, which then, really grows your name and grows your brand within the community and within other communities too. Just knowing that you are willing to do things like that and be a little bit more creative and not just be like, this is the studio that I teach at and this is where I teach. And, and I know that I don't know if it's as much of a thing anymore, but like I had a non-compete for 15 years. So I was, yes, I had a very strict non-compete. So I could not teach at any studio within a 60-mile radius unless I was teaching as Jessica from the studio that I taught at.
Wow.
Yes. But that was because the majority of what I did was create content for the studio, for the teacher trainings, for their continuing education. And at that point, I was the only teacher that was registered through Yoga Alliance as a continuing education provider. So they wanted everyone to come to us to get those hours as opposed to losing that money. And I will tell you right now, if anyone asks you to sign a non-compete, don't do it. It is, don't have, it just doesn't, it's not, it makes no sense for us as teachers in this day and age. At that point, it kind of did in some realms, because I was paid well for it, but not what I should have been. And you should not limit yourself, um, in that way by having someone control where you can and can't teach and what content you can and can't provide because it's your intellectual property.
And at the end of the day, you're an independent contractor. You can really go, you can serve, you can teach. You get to go do that as you please. That I didn't have to sign a non-compete, but there was, I think as the yoga community started to like boom at a certain point, I think it was only like a couple years into me teaching, like yoga studios were just like popping up and it was just like a lot more. Yeah. And so when that started happening, that's when I started to really notice the energy at studios and like how people took the business side so like to heart, I guess. That at that point I was approached and was kind of like, hey, I noticed you teach at all these different places. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a struggling yoga teacher who's just trying to pay my bills. And they're like, well, we can't have you teach over there and teach over here. And it'd be like, okay, well then bye, because I gotta be able to eat. So sorry, unless you're gonna pay me full time, to like teach here, then sorry, like that's, I don't know. It's so crazy that there was that expectation. It's almost like, you guys pay me, you know how much I get paid. Like, you think that I can afford not to do that? Like, it's crazy.
Another really important thing to touch on that same exact idea is most yoga teachers are not in a situation where a studio is offering them any type of health insurance or benefits. So you also have to take that into consideration when you are, when I had my non-compete, I was an employee of that space. So they were paying me, I was full-time, I was also managing the studio. So, I mean, it was a little bit of a different situation, but I still should not have had my teaching limited because of my experience and my accreditation through Yoga Alliance. So that's one thing that now, as a more seasoned teacher and practitioner and human being, I would absolutely never do. But what Kaycie said is incredibly valid because, on top of the driving and, eating and all of those things, paying your bills, you have to have insurance somewhere, and not just yoga insurance, but like health insurance, or at least have the option of being able to have money put away that you can, afford to be ill one day and not have to go teach when you are violently ill. Because I guarantee Kaycie has taught so many classes when she's like, I just want to stay home. And I've done the same thing because I'm like, I have to go teach because this is my only form of bringing in money right now. So that is
Mhm.
definitely something to consider.
I am so glad you brought that up because getting sick as a yoga teacher means you are on a sick vacation.
Yes.
Or just going on
Yes.
vacation in general anymore. That is something I'm still struggling with now because it's like I can prepare for my vacation with money ahead of time, but then I have to remember I don't have money when I'm coming back because I haven't worked. And like that's still something uh long term I know that's going to change, but like right now it definitely makes me specific of what I do, who I'm doing it with, and where I'm going because my time is quite literally worth a lot of money at this point. So I have to pick and choose what I'm doing when I'm doing it.
Hmm. Yeah, because it's almost like you do pay double for vacations because it's like if you're out there spending money, you're not making money. It's like you're watching the numbers go down and you're like, oh shoot, I gotta go back and work, gotta go back and teach. So
But the
it's like
freedom, it's worth it. It's worth it. But still, it's just definitely something in the back of our heads.
exactly. It's like you're not getting, PTO. You don't have those things lined up for yourself. And like that part does make it stressful at times because it's like you have to make those really conscious choices on a financial level and have to have really good savings to be able to like, prioritize those things into your life too. But definitely not the easiest adventure for people. And I know that most yogis like we like vacations, we like traveling, we like nature, we like those things. And so it's nice to be able to do those things. And also it's just like kind of going back to what Jess said too, like the schedule, you're going to get like a crappy schedule in the beginning. You're probably not going to get the classes that you want, like those kinds of things. And realistically, most studios have morning classes and evening classes. And you might have some places that have like a noon offering or an early morning offering or a really late offering or something. But we know the morning class and the evening classes are probably going to have the higher attendance. The morning on a weekend is going to have a higher attendance. Like those are just kind of, those are the spots where, the teachers that have a good following end up in those pockets of time. And so you end up kind of struggling in that manner too, because, what I noticed was the yoga teacher schedule was, I knew I could call any of my yoga teacher friends at like 11 a.m. and be like, hey, what are you doing? Like, oh, you're just hanging out? Cool, me too. Like we got the whole middle of the day just wide open. And it's a really kind of a weird thing, that that's just how it is. And so you get used to either you're teaching, honestly, you're probably just teaching because if you're trying to survive, you're picking up as many time slots as you can. So you're teaching in the morning, you're teaching at night, you have the drive time in between all of that. And then you end up putting your practice often on the back burner, or you're trying to fit it in a home practice on your own rather than going to a group class. It's just a really different shift, I think, in dynamic and everything that, yeah, our time is valuable. And I think the more we start teaching, like the more we realize like, okay, yeah, this whole $20 an hour is just not cutting it for me. I got to start like thinking outside the box, which April, I don't know where it is, but it's like this little, like a shop or something. You just taught there. What is
Oh,
that?
monsoon market, my girls.
That is so cool. I
Yeah.
love that. And you get a good turnout there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that I always say they're like my prime time, like my best example because they give me the freedom. They promote as much as I promote. Like they support me, I support them, and it's consistent. We do it every month, one Sunday a month, so people know it's going to happen. So we get like regulars all the time. Like I could like cry when I like go in there. I'm like, I see everyone all the time, or we get like really new people. And I always ask at the beginning of the class, I'm like, whose first time is at the class? Whose first time is at the market? And like, it's just so cool to see so many hands being like, oh yeah, my first time here, my first time at the market. So again, we're nothing without our community and being an independent contractor and quite our job is to diverse or implement ourselves into this community and the people who are coming to the classes and want to learn and want to grow. So, and again, I also say it's like I was very intentional. I was like, I know that this is my passion and I don't want my passion to just be a paycheck. Like, yes, it is at this point, but like, the day I wake up and I'm like dreading XYZ is the day I know that I need to figure this out because I just don't want that to be a thing. So it's like, when you know how much you can make doing something by yourself and then you're going to teach at a studio and they're giving you like $35, I'm just like, this isn't sitting well with me anymore. So again, like I found that place. It's really cool in there. I just approached them about an idea and I was like, hey, like I have an idea, like I'll do XYZ, we'll get people in. Because of course, after the class wraps up, people will buy from the market. So they're getting sales from people buying from them. And yeah, it works. So it's a really fun
I
time.
love that. And
Yeah.
since we are at three, I don't want to like take up all your time, but I really, really wanted to kind of hear about your kind of direction with your retreats and like what you got going on. And if you don't mind sharing a little bit on that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so we have 4 retreats we're doing next year. We always try to do most of them internationally or domestically, one internationally. So we have Arizona next year, New Mexico, California, and Costa Rica. And our goal is we've gotten multiple people to come back to our retreat. So we're kind of making more than just a retreat vibe. We're making it like, of course, come to the retreats, come practice with us in person, learn with us in person. But then we really are trying to hone in on the online community aspect too. Cause like they keep coming back. We want them to come back. We like what we're building. So how do we stay connected outside of just the retreat space too? So we always funnel them into our online offerings, our online communities, our free workshops that we still do once a month too. So trying to create something bigger than just the weekend that we see each other at the retreat. Like let's keep it going.
I love that. Yeah. And do you feel like, I mean, we don't have to talk about exact numbers, but do you feel like retreats are a lucrative direction?
Definitely. I mean, I'm definitely growing into that space, and I know next year will be a completely different game changer than this year was. I mean, this year wasn't bad at all, but and I'll be honest, we've definitely upped our prices for our retreats next year because we know what we're doing. We know our worth. This is not our first rodeo. Like, and I think it says a lot about us that people keep coming back to our retreats, coming to multiple retreats. So it's like, we know what's going on here. Um, so I'm happy with what we did this year because again, I get it. Like life's tough. So I feel like we were able to offer tickets that were more accessible to people. And when you offer more accessibility, you're going to get more people. So like we got more people into our retreats. They see our worth. And I feel like I know because it's happening now. I know that now they know what we're worth, that they're more than happy to pay the uptick in the tickets that we have for 2025. So I think next year I'll say that more confidently. I'll definitely make more money from what we're doing, but like not of course the goal, but again, we just like know our time and our value and things like that too. So
Not to
that's
mention the time and work and organization and coordination to get all of those things done, breaking down all the numbers and transportation and then the communication along the way. Like, I think people do not understand how much goes into the preparation, the planning, and even just finding the places to do these things, you know?
I actually love that you said that because our goal is after 2025. Like, I don't want to keep doing this. We want to rather hire yoga instructors to teach our retreats, and we just want to do the dirty work that nobody wants to do. So, like, our goal is after 2025, we just want to host maybe 1 or 2 of our own retreats a year and start giving other instructors the opportunity. Because again, everyone doesn't want to do what we're doing, like the back end work, like you just said, which is valid. I totally get that. So, like, I would love to pay a teacher what they're worth because I know how much studios are paying people to run these retreats and it's ridiculous how low they're paying them. So I would love to be able to take those instructors, pay them what they're worth, and have them host retreats for us that would just, again, build our community into a bigger space.
I love that. Jess, actually, I had 2 retreats that I had planned prior to COVID, and it was supposed to happen in 2020, going to Bali. And I had 2 retreats planned that had sold out. It was really exciting. And then 2020 happened, and literally for 3 years, it just continued to get pushed and pushed and pushed. And like after the amount of communication and just trying to touch base and relay information and like all the changes and then oh this person can't come now and like trying to figure out all the accommodations was an absolute nightmare for me. And I didn't even end up being able to go on either one of them myself, and so I had to pay to have someone, and that was something new for me because I had no idea what to base it off of. I was just basically like, hey, this is what I can afford. Are you willing to, like, would you like to go do this? And Jess ended up actually doing one of them for me. And yeah, and it was just like thank you so much. Like I really wish I could have gone, but did you feel like, so I guess in that sense, it's so hard to know, like, because retreats are all different lengths of time and they have different things that are going to be incorporated in them. There's so many different things to consider. Obviously, your travel should always be paid for. Your accommodation should be taken care of, and you should get paid for the time it takes to, I mean, realistically, if you are hosting a retreat, you're doing everything. You're guiding the retreat, you're talking to them, you're teaching all the classes, all the workshops, you're going on all the excursions with them. Like, you are in it, living life with these people. And
You,
yeah, go ahead.
well, and you have to be available to them all the time.
Mhm.
There's not downtime as the person who's physically there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that part too is just like, it's exciting because you get to fully immerse yourself into this experience and with these people, but it's also, it's a lot energetically. And I think that was the biggest thing is, having these conversations in the past when I was struggling a lot with like just teaching a whole bunch of classes and stuff. And I remember someone saying, well, you only teach like 3 classes sometimes max a day. Like, you could definitely be like teaching, that's only like 3 hours. And I'm like, do you not realize the energetic exchange that goes into all of this? That I honestly, I don't know anyone that could teach more than, like, if you're teaching more than 3 classes a day, you are burnt toast at the end of the day. That's all I got to say. And I feel bad for your last class because they did not get the best version of you. Um, so I am going to wrap this up just because we're right at that time. There are a couple other things I really wanted to discuss. So I think I'm going to make a part 2 of this. I would really like to go over privates, and I would love to go over the world of going online, and then touching into other little directions as well that you guys have insight on, or anything like that. So thank you guys for being here today. I really, really appreciate everything that y'all shared. And just so you know, not only do I get to know you guys more and just kind of building the community on here, but because these get posted afterwards, my vision for all of this is to help educate those that are interested in stepping into the world of becoming a yoga teacher. It can feel like I've had so much outreach from people like, hey, I'm just looking to make some extra money, like, teaching yoga, asking about the 200-hour program. And it's just like, first of all, we'll talk about the intention and everything maybe in the later episode. But also just in the sense that, like, well, if you're getting into this to make a lot of money, I don't know that this is necessarily the direction, especially if it's only a part-time gig, So hopefully we can cover all of that as well. But thank you guys so much. Amy, if you want to say any last little words, I'll just open it up here.
No, thanks for asking me to come on this. And it was so cool to talk to everyone and meet everyone. I think it's more realistic, like a more realistic way of doing this. Like, we're just like also humans out here doing the dang thing and trying to figure it out. And we all have really unique perspectives to share. So it was cool to sit down with you guys.
Yay. And I hope we can talk more.
Yeah, it was so awesome to meet all of you and be able to talk to everyone. And it's really interesting being able to connect and have the different perspectives because I think all of us go into this for different reasons. All of us have incredibly different experiences. And it's just really great to see, the places that there are overlap and where we can learn from each other and how we can continue to, build and grow this community so that it does become something that those of us who are doing it as a career can actually, sustain that for long term and not have to teach
Absolutely.
11 arm balance workshops in a week.
Unless you want to.
Unless you want to, then you go.
Awesome. And then go ahead, Emma.
Sorry, I was just going to say thank you for holding this space. I was really excited when I saw that this was something that you were doing, and I'm excited to see kind of what some of the future topics are going to end up covering as well. And just like a tiny comment I wanted to make is I went to one of those Bali retreats, the one that Sharon covered.
Yes.
And I mean, it was amazing, but I did realize partway through, I was like, this took a lot of work because, there were places that it was just the whole itinerary was all set out. And I was like, I can't imagine how long it took Kaycie to sit down and like do this. So I just wanted to kind of show some appreciation and acknowledgement for all that hard work that you put in. And
Much love.
unfortunately, you didn't get to go, but hey, we all had a great time. So
So glad to hear that. So glad. And just so you guys know, I'll have this available on my YouTube channel. So if you wanted to go and rewatch it, or if you knew someone who was interested in kind of getting into the world of yoga but didn't really know about this topic, feel free to share. And just because I know you are promoting your stuff, do you want to go ahead and just drop like your website or your information, April, on where people can find your retreats?
Oh yeah, so it's rootedrenewalwellnessretreats.com, and it has like the About Me page. All of our retreats are there, PDFs with what we still have available, what's sold out, all that jazz too. And we yoga teachers are also social media managers at this point, so you can DM me on all my Instagrams because I will have that information too.
Awesome. That just
Thank-
reminds me when we respond on social media with like, we will get back to you or we will figure it out. And it's like, yes,
me.
big old we right here.
Yeah, team of we, which is me.
Well, I just started following you on Instagram, so I'm super excited to see what you're
Yeah.
up to.
I'll find you too, Emma.
Let the
And if you, I
connections
was saying,
begin.
if you need someone to teach or lead a retreat for you, let me
All
know.
right, I'll remember that.
Because
I'm
I'm
happy.
always everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's very convenient.
Love it.
All right, you guys, happy Sunday. And I hope to see y'all soon.
Awesome. Bye, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks.